Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Lunchtime Love and Light Lessons with Christina Johnson. I am your host, and I am so excited. I am super excited because today I am joined in the studio with my amazing guest, Dr. Sue Collins, who is the founder of Synergistic Healing Center of Atlanta. She's a certified life coach, my personal life coach, which makes it more exciting for me. Dr. Collins was an associate professor with the Department of Criminal Justice at Georgia State University, where she retired after 15 years. She's a licensed attorney in the state of Florida and has held multiple positions in the legal and criminal justice field. You're like 5 degrees in, aren't you? And I'm so blessed to have her here as a guest today. She is so wonderful. She has been helping me tremendously in my life, you guys. And I thought that she would be an amazing guest because today we're talking about... I'm so excited. Who are you really and what do you really want? Those are two very serious questions because we've been so conditioned and the way that we've been raised. Do you really know who you are? If you were to take away everyone's opinions, like your social conditioning, who are you really? And I can relate to so much of her new book. She has a new book coming out called Return to Self. And I could see myself in that book. I read that book, and especially the part about self-hatred, because I grew up really hating myself. I didn't think that I was beautiful, God forbid, pretty or attractive. I didn't love myself. I thought my lips were too big for my face. My nose was too wide. All of my features were so big, and I was like, I'm not pretty. No one's going to ever want me. And it didn't help that I grew up around abuse. So reading this book really touched me because I know what it feels like to hate yourself and to not love yourself. I hated the image that was staring back at me. So can you, first of all, say hello to everyone, Dr. Collins?
Hi. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy
as you're
to
doing
have
the
you.
leading, I'm about to cry
Aww.
because I see myself as you're speaking about yourself.
Yes.
I see myself all over again.
Wow.
And I remember looking in the mirror and seeing the big lips
Yes.
at a time when big lips weren't popular. I mean, there was
They
no
weren't
Botox
cute.
then. They weren't cute.
Okay.
And I remember looking in the mirror and seeing dark skin when light skin ruled, So I get it.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited to share with the audience and to share about my new book. And I hope to get lots of questions from you guys.
Yes, please, you guys, call in. The call-in number is 770-988-6461. We would love to have your feedback, share your wisdom, share your stories. Call in and ask Dr. Collins any questions that you may have. I'm so excited. I see the lines are coming in already, which is exciting. So, Dr. Collins, how do you tell us a little bit about your journey with the self-hatred? Where did that start for you?
I say this in the book, I can never remember a time that I really loved myself. And maybe that's because at that time I didn't know what self-love was. What I remember is being in a classroom with kids who had 2-parent families and kids who were very light-skinned. Some looked almost white, and kids whose families hung out with the teachers, and my mom didn't hang out with the teachers,
Right.
And I remember I had a gap in my teeth, in my front teeth, and the girls had their moms would fix their hair in the little cute ponytails,
Yes.
like the part down the middle and the two ponytails on the side, and they were all twisted. My mom had one style: a plait across the front, 2 down the side on each side, and 3 down the back. That was it.
Yeah.
And there were no bows, no cute bows on it, no cute ribbons. It's like that was it.
Wow.
And when I looked in the mirror, it's like there was nothing cute about that to me. So I think probably for as long as I can remember, there were periods during my life when I thought I looked kind of cute, but that voice in my head that said, no, 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 no.
So
So it didn't last long.
Oh,
It wasn't.
yes.
It wasn't long lasting. It was
Right.
just here and there. There were periods when I thought, you know, if I got my weight under control, oh, I look cute.
Right.
But then that didn't last long because I started eating, right?
Yes.
Self-destructive behavior.
Yes.
And I used to have long hair, and I cut it, and I cut it, and I cut it. And then when I looked in the mirror in the end, it's like, oh, that doesn't look good. So I've struggled with that for most of my life. And it really has been only in the last 5 years that I've put it to bed.
Wow.
What a blessing.
Isn't
I mean,
that
finally,
Yes,
finally.
yes. And we all strive to get to that point where we can really start to love ourselves again and have self-worth. So define for us what self-worth is for the listeners.
Self-worth really is the value that you place on yourself. I mean, but in order to have self-worth, in order to have value, you have to understand, you have to do the what I call the deep dive in terms of digging to see, who am I? Which of these beliefs that I have are mine, as opposed to beliefs that people tell me. Society says I should look this way, I should do this, I should do that. And many times when we have these external standards, we always fail. There's always something that we can't do because the standard is coming from outside as opposed to inside. And so self-worth is when you, we won't even say, I started to say when you look in the mirror. I won't even say when you look in the mirror. But when you are having your private moment and you think about everything about you, internally and otherwise, how do I feel about me?
Yes.
How do I feel about me?
Right.
Do I love me regardless? Do I get excited at the thought that I am? Or do the voices in my head, do they tell me, you're not this, you're not that, you can't do this, you can't do that, and so that you are always coming up short?
Yes.
So when you can look internally and love yourself despite your quote-unquote defects, and I put it in quotes because there aren't any defects, it's just who God made you to be.
Yes.
But if you can look in the mirror of your internal mirror, and love yourself unconditionally, you've got great self-worth, and that really is where you want to be. But if you look in the mirror and every time you look, you see, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough,
Yes.
then there is the area, low self-esteem, low self-worth,
Yes.
and that's when you get into what I talk about in the book as being that disease of not enoughism.
Yes.
So regardless of what you do, and you, this has nothing to do with money, and it really has nothing to do with the external appearances, although that's what we focus on.
Right.
It really is a dis-ease within yourself.
Yes.
And it is a dis-ease of the spirit.
Yes. I know I grew up with that. You guys see why I love Dr. Sue Collins so much? I love her so much. And we've been digging in my past to connect the dots. And I love that. And it's very hard because so many people feel this way and don't even know it.
Yeah.
That they're telling themselves this story of, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough. I know growing up, I didn't have my biological father in my life. He didn't claim me as a child. And so I would see my other siblings at the tire and body shop that his family owned with him. And we would ride past, because I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not a big city. So you pass there all the time going to and fro, and I would pass there and see them, and the first question I would ask was, what is wrong with me? Because why isn't he asking me? I see all his other kids, even kids that weren't from his wife. So I couldn't say, oh, well, maybe it's just his wife's children. It was just me. And so I grew up with that, and we've been digging into that, looking for that love that I wasn't getting from him and seeking that in other people. And we were able, you guys, to go back to a birthday party that I had when I was very young, where my biological father pulled up to our house where me, my stepdad, my mom, and my two brothers lived, and he handed me a gift out of the window. and he said, happy birthday, sweetheart. And then he pulled it off and left. He didn't even stay for the party. And I remember that day saying, wow, I mean, he doesn't really care that it's my birthday. He's not going to stay to celebrate with me. So what is wrong with me? And that day is the day that I decided, you know what? I'm going to start calling my stepdad dad, because he's always here. He takes care of my mom and my family. Even though there was a lot going on in our home, I took the initiative, so to speak, over my life and said, well, I'm going to start calling him dad because I know that's going to make him happy. And that followed me throughout my life. So being able to connect those dots and see where it came from, me searching for that love, longing for that love, but instead of me giving it to myself or understanding how, I started giving it away. And so for the most of my life, I've given myself away in a way that I didn't even understand, because I didn't understand that a lot of me doing that was to get love in return. And being able to connect those dots, you guys, is what is healing me and my family through a lot of pain. So I know for me, there was a lot, and you talk about this in the book, toxic shame and guilt.
I was thinking about that this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Because just alone seeing my mom in an abusive relationship, and me actually repeating that cycle after promising myself that I never would allow my children to see me go through that, I was ashamed, and I knew how to put that mask on. So when people saw me, my family saw me, they're like, ooh, y'all look so happy, he's so good to you. But behind closed doors, there was sometimes a different story. And so not understanding that shame kept me from seeking help. Because I remember telling my sister, Michelle, like, this happened to me. And she's like, I never would have thought in a million years that it would be this person. And you didn't tell me. Don't ever do that again. Because if something happened to you, we never would have even suspected. But just trying to keep that mask on. And because of the shame, a lot of times when you're in abusive relationships, you don't want to tell anyone what's happening to you. You feel ashamed as if you're the perpetrator. And so just being a survivor of abuse and seeing abuse growing up, it taught me this is what love is supposed to look like, subconsciously, without me even knowing. And I was already a danger to myself because I felt like I wasn't good enough from birth, really. So I don't know. What do you think about that? The mask, the false self, and toxic shame and guilt.
I think that we all wear masks. And I don't think all masks are bad, but I think that it depends on why you wear the mask, right? I say that we all wear masks because let's just take an example where, say, you and your brother, if you have a brother, for instance, you're just playing and both of you do something that you know is wrong, and mom comes into the room and she says, what happened? Who did that? And both of you go, not me. Not me. I didn't do it. Right. And you put on this face of innocence, and now you know you did it, right? But you put on this face of innocence because you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to be blamed, right? And if your parents tend to be strict disciplinarians, or if they tend to be abusive, then anytime you do something that you think they may not like, you put on this mask. And in that case, the mask is to protect you, right? And perhaps to minimize the discipline that you might be subjected to. The problem, I think, comes in when you begin to believe the mask, right? What the mask represents.
That's right.
And in the book, I talk about the false self because we put on so many layers based on, and I'll come back to this in a little bit, but I want to use it just in the context of talking about the mask. We put on these layers, and then pretty soon we can't distinguish between who we are in actuality and who the mask says we should be.
Wow.
Right? And so that's, in the book, what I say about myself is I put on the mask, and the mask became me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so at that point, I could no longer distinguish. And
Absolutely right.
I had this sense of unease about who I was being, but I didn't know how not to be that.
Yes.
Didn't know how not to be that. And with regard to the false self or the false identity, I was thinking about that this morning and thought about it as well when I was writing the book. Society tells us who we should, well, it starts even with our parents, right?
Yes.
But our parents tell us that we should be certain, you know, you're going to grow up, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. My mama told me, you're going to be a teacher, right? And I said, I don't want to teach. I don't like kids like that. And just, I mean, obviously I ended up teaching anyway, but they have in mind, your parents have in mind who they want you to be.
That's right.
Oftentimes it is based on their desires for themselves that were unfulfilled, right? And those desires that they may have had, that they have, may have been based on what their parents had for them.
True.
So it's not just one generation that we're talking about. All of this comes forward, and then you coming to being, you're born, and your mom and your dad look at you and they go, oh, my wonderful child, and you're bringing with it all of the history, all of your ancestral history converges at that moment, right? And so then you've got society, which says, well, you should be this way. Now, in our society, I don't know if I should go here or not, but I'm going to say white is still the standard in terms of beauty, right? We look in the mirror and we don't look white. Right? And so we do certain things to make us fit more in with the standard.
Very true.
And so we are creating an identity that is acceptable within the context of the society that we live in.
But
it starts, it is not being true. That is that false self.
Wow.
In order to get to the true self, which is your divine nature, which is one with God, you got to go in deeply and dig all of those layers. What do I believe? Why do I believe it? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Because many times we have no clue.
Absolutely. And it is driving me bananas, okay? I'm just saying, because going back and really digging in your past is painful enough. But having to tell yourself these truths, like face yourself and the ugliness and the beautiful parts and at first I was so excited. I had my little notepad and I was writing. I came back. Okay, this is what I wrote. This is what I found. And we're connecting the dots. And then I had I'd say about 2 weeks of tears. Like I always say, my best friend Tony always says that. You're the most non-crier I've ever met. Because I'm like, oh, I'm not a crier. But then honestly, 2 weeks of that digging drove me crazy. So it is work. It is work. But it is so worth it. Because this morning when I woke up, I'm like, I haven't cried in about a week. Like,
very good.
I think I'm doing well. And it's a part of that process and releasing that false self, because we do tell ourselves stories that are not true about a lot of things, not just ourselves, but the people that we feel like have hurt us, who have betrayed us. We're constantly telling ourselves the story and we're upset and angry. And that's one of my things. Like, I'll be mad about something that happened 20 years ago. And when I'm dealing with the person, I go back to that 20 years ago as if they're the same and not giving them the opportunity to change. And I remember a young lady saying online, like, I want to give to, God's people. I want to pour into people. That's who I am. And the first question that came to my mind is, what are you giving to yourself? What are you pouring into yourself? And I think sometimes, a lot of times, especially as women, like, we feel guilty for giving to ourselves. We feel guilty for putting ourselves first, when I feel like you have to take care of you in order to take care of everyone else and be strong for everyone else. So the work is necessary and it blesses you. So yeah, I'm taking off my mask, people. Are you with me? You guys, I'm so looking forward to this new book from Dr. Sue Collins, our guest today, Return to Self. You guys call in 770-988-6461 while you have this angel here so that you can ask questions, share your wisdom and your experiences if you're identifying with some of this, because it is work, but it is so beautiful to come into real self-love and self-worth because you are worthy. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to really realize that we're God's children. We're worthy of love, but that love has to first come from you. Do you believe that?
I do, and we talk about self-love all the time. But my experience has been that most of us have no clue what it is. And speaking of my own personal experience, I remember as I started my what I call delayering process, as I started that, and one of the things that I was asked by my mentor coach was, well, what are you doing to love yourself? And I said, well, I don't know. What should I be doing? And then they talked about self-love, and I thought, well, I don't really know what that looks like. What does that look like?
Wow.
And so maybe I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but maybe one of the questions we should ask is, what does self-love look like to the audience, to them, right? I ultimately came to realize that I didn't know how to love myself. If you talk to me about self-love, I thought, well, get my nails done, get my hair done, maybe go to a movie, take myself out to dinner. But they were all things that were external to me.
That's right.
And they were all things that were very temporary and not lasting, and things that did not feed the spirit. And with many of my clients, when we get to this point and I'm talking to them about how do you love yourself, how do you show yourself that you love yourself, and those are the things that they share as well, that, well, I went to a concert, or I bought myself a new dress, or and all of that's good. It's an aspect, but it's a materialistic aspect with regard to the self-love. In order to really, I think, commune with your soul, you got to set aside some time. So, and what does that look like? Do you meditate? What are you feeding your mind in terms of what you read spiritually? When was the last time you just went to a park and looked at a butterfly? When was the last time you just walked to the water's edge and looked at how God has made the river flow?
Right.
Knowing that there are ecosystems underneath that everything is perfect in terms of how it all comes together. When was the last time you just stood there and experienced the sun on your face? You know, to feel God kiss you with the breath of the wind. When was the last time you did that? Those are the things that feed your spirit.
Yes. Wow, that's so beautiful. And we're notorious for dressing up the outside. So you speak of that, like, oh, I took myself somewhere, or I got my nails done, I got my hair done. We know how to make it look like we have it all together. And it's hard for us sometimes to invest that money into dealing with ourselves. Really investing in the internal, not the external, because things can be a mess that we've created by society, as we talked about, and our own poor thoughts of ourselves. What's a perspective that you think people could look at that makes them want to invest their time and money into healing? Because putting something outside, buying a new purse, getting some shoes, getting your hair and nails done, makeup, that's all well and good. But what difference does it make if you're beautiful on the outside and shredded on the inside?
Well, I'll share my perspective, which may or may not find resonance with the audience, but I believe that we're one with God. And I believe that when you can tap into your divine nature, that's where the healing begins. But I also believe that everything is spiritual. Our relationship with money is spiritual. Money is simply energy. You know, we can say. Did you know, for instance, that when we first began as people, right, that we use things like tea as an exchange of value for money, right?
Wow.
And we use the cowrie shell. So anything that you think about can be money.
Right.
What we put our value, our stock in, is what society tells us that we should do. You should look good on the outside, but society doesn't tell you should feed your soul. Society doesn't tell you. I mean, you go to church on Sunday. Many of us do. We go to church on Sunday. We hear the message. We receive what the minister or the pastor tells us, that very short scripture that they have time to discuss. But we don't do the digging in terms of, well, how does this resonate with me? What does this mean in my life? How can I internalize it? How can I move forward with what I'm learning here? Mostly we go in and we go for the emotion.
That's right.
Right? And we say, oh man, that was a great sermon. But when you leave, what did you take from that that's feeding your soul?
That's right.
Right? Because ultimately, the way to, if you want to have your ideal life, whatever that is, want to be a millionaire, it starts with the spirit. You want to travel the world? You can travel the world. If you have the money, you can travel the world and be absolutely miserable.
Absolutely.
If you have not fed your spirit, if you don't know who you are as a divine being. So everything, for me, everything comes back to the answer to the question, who are you being, is who are you being as a spirit person? Who are you being with regard to your divine nature?
Right.
Who are you being in your relationship with God?
Yes.
If you don't know the answers to that, if I ask you, what do you believe in, and you can only tell me, I don't believe in religion, I don't believe in tithing, I don't believe in, if you can tell me what you don't believe, but you can't tell me what you do believe in, then that's where the work has to be done.
Yes.
Because everything is spiritual. And when you work with, when you get your spiritual body in order, everything else works.
It falls into place.
It's the foundation, and it not only is it the foundation, but it is intricately interwoven in every aspect of life.
Absolutely true. Wow. See, you guys, Dr. Sue Collins giving you that word this morning. You guys call in with your questions and comments to 770-988-6461. We have Dr. Sue Collins, life coach extraordinaire, in the building. And I want you to call in because we want to hear from you. I wanted to also mention, you talked about people are hurting. You know, right now, a lot is going on in the world. People are really hurting. I know by now everyone's heard about Kate Spade committing suicide yesterday. This past weekend, me and my friends went up to Pastor John Gray had an installment in Greenville, South Carolina, and one of the ministers who was on the way had to turn around because one of the members of the church, who had been going to his church for years, she hung herself. And Kate Spade hung herself yesterday, and they were talking about mental illness being a factor in that. And so many people are hurting. How do we quiet that storyteller is one question. And is there a tie to the false self and mental illness? Because, you know, we're hearing these voices, we're hearing these stories that we're telling ourselves, we've been hurting for years from our past. How do we deal with that? How do we quiet that storyteller and start to heal?
That is such a deep question.
I know.
And, you know, since you've read the book, then you know my story. And in the book, I share about my suicide attempts. And I'll tell you that I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. And you go into that space where it's just totally black inside.
Yeah.
And there's no light. See, I see light. I see God as a light in my life. In my body, I actually see it very physically and viscerally, that I feel God's presence. And in those moments when I contemplated suicide, it was because the light wasn't there, and I didn't know how to get it back. And there was nobody that I could talk to. And it's all well and good for people to say, if you commit suicide, then God's not going to bless you, you're going to burn in hell. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have judgment on that. What I do know is that if you say that to the person who is in that place, you're not really helping them. You're not giving them anything. You got to give them something that they can hold on to.
Yeah.
One of my clients is a young male, And he came to me just recently because he had attempted to do a couple of things. One is that he had just started to ram his head into the wall. Another is that he had attempted to jump out of a car moving at 30 miles per hour. Hurting, hurting, because going back to what you were saying about your experience as a little girl, his pain started way back then.
I see.
3 years old, right? Feeling that his life is out of control. So by the time we think, okay, so right now this person is, let's say the person is 30, the person is 40, the person is however old they are, and they commit suicide. They've been wearing this false mask, and you've been thinking that everything was well, right? And they've been wearing the mask. But underneath the mask is the pain.
Yes.
It's the pain.
Wow.
And to say, go to church is fine. And speak with a coach or speak with the counselor. If the counselor or the coach or the therapist can't tap into that pain, right? If they can't tap into it, if they can't show you, I understand. There's light, there's hope. There, by whatever name, however you envision God, there is hope. Hang on. If you can just hang on for one more day.
Right.
Let me just give you something, something out that's inside of you. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and one of the things they taught us in AA is if you don't have...
That's okay.
So sorry.
We all do it. Don't worry. Mine is always on as well.
If you can't believe, if you don't have a God of your own to believe in, your sponsor will tell you, believe in mine. If your God is too little to help you deal with the problems that you have, believe in my God, because I got a big one. So I'm going to say to the audience, I've been through some stuff in my life. I have been through a lot. And I know that most of you have probably been through stuff as well. Get yourself a big God, a God in all caps. Somebody that when the darkness overtakes you, somebody that you can know, I know that if I can just make it another second. And sometimes as a recovering alcoholic or recovering addict or recovering whatever it is you're recovering from, it is a second by second process. That's what you tell the person who is suicidal.
Wow.
Don't try to live for tomorrow.
Right.
Can you just stay with me one more second?
Wow.
One more second.
That is powerful. So we have a caller. We're going to take our first caller. It's been so good. I haven't even been focused on this. Hello, caller. Give us your name and where you're calling from. Hello. Hi.
Hi, this is Tony Acey.
Hi, Tony.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
You know, I've been waiting to hear Dr. Collins because I've heard so much about you, Sister Christina. So I can't wait to meet you personally.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I had to call in because I heard you guys talking about, like, do you recognize when you're actually being good to yourself besides accepting yourself for things. And I've been wrestling with that lately, just trying.
Your phone's going in and out.
All right, I don't have to do it.
Tony. Her phone's going in and out, so we'll wait to see if it comes back. Tony, are you with us? I could hear it for a second.
Let me move to another area.
Okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was saying I wanted to touch on the fact that you were talking about how do you recognize when you're actually treating yourself, the best and loving on yourself besides externally, because that's something I've been wrestling with and dealing with daddy issues, not feeling like you're worthy of real love and, because that's your first impression of it. And if he leaves you, then you start to think, well, every man in my life is probably going to do the same thing,
Yes, absolutely.
So I was just wondering what your ideas about that is like dealing with your dad issues.
Well, I certainly had
After
daddy
college.
issues. When you read the book, you'll see my daddy issue story. But I,
Okay.
I think that for many of us, because our dads do hold such a powerful role, that that if we don't feel that we're receiving the love from them, then we're always looking. And not only are we always looking, but we're always looking for somebody that has the characteristics that they have, or at least we think they had. Because, and I say that last part because oftentimes what we do, especially if dad leaves at a young age, right? What we do is
Right.
attribute characteristics to him that we want him to have, because in fact we don't know if they're that way at all. It's like having the
That's right.
Cinderella story, right? You know, Cinderella lived happily ever after, but
Yes.
everybody was really wonderful to her. And so that's who we make up these stories in our mind about who our dad would be and how he would be. And then we act on them, we internalize them, we act on them as if they are real because they become real for us. And as we are moving forward in our relationships, whether it's with our boyfriend or ultimately the person that we marry as our husband, we're still looking for somebody who has those characteristics that we attributed to our dad.
Right. Okay.
So how do you go about
And-
healing that area, in short, where you can move past that and really look for a person who's genuinely what you want? I guess it would take you to know who you really are.
You've got to go back to yourself.
Yeah.
Because you have all these layers, and even society tells you, well, a good dad should be this way. A good dad should be loving. But what does that mean? Well, a good dad would take you places, buy you dinner, take you to a movie, take you to Disneyland. Okay, so is that how you are describing, for instance, this person in your life that you are your male friend, your significant other? He's good to me because he does these things. But that's all very superficial, right? Because in order for
Right.
you to really know what you need to not just survive, but to thrive, you've got to get back to the spirit. What does your spirit need? What does your spirit need?
Right.
I mean, for me, everything goes back to who am I being as a spirit being? What is my divine nature? What is my relationship with God?
Wow.
When I am,
Right.
and I can tell early on, I wasn't good at doing this, as you'll see in the book, but as I have transitioned now so that I know who I am, and when I was growing up, I would hear people say, not only do I know who I am, I know whose I am.
Yeah.
Well, now that I know whose I am and I know that we are one, then the things that I was looking for outside of me for somebody to give to me, I no longer look outside. I no longer look outside.
Wow.
Because that sense of
that's
support,
great. Yeah.
that sense of love, whatever it is that you need, you can get from your
yourself.
relationship with God.
Wow.
And I remember one night, and I'll just share this very briefly and kind of keep it really, I was feeling so alone and lonely, and I wanted a companion, and I was crying, and what I began to feel, like some people would say in the traditional church, the Holy Spirit, but I began to feel what I felt was God's presence, right? And it was so warm and so embracing and so supportive, and I had never in my life felt that way. And what I heard in my heart was, whatever you need, I've got. Whatever you want, I'll provide.
Wow.
And it was just, I can't even really describe it, but nurturing, supporting. It was the most loving embrace. I mean, I actually felt like God had wrapped me up in his arms. It was the most loving embrace that I had ever experienced. So whatever you need, God's got it.
Yeah.
But you've got to first be clear about who you are and what your relationship with God is.
You got that, Tony?
Yes, I got.
Girl.
I'm taking notes. I'm like, okay, I got it.
Man,
But
that
I,
is.
I think that that's so true that when you start to know what it is that you want and who you really are and what, like you said, what your relationship with God is, that not, it's harder for people to penetrate that, like, because you know that, okay, these are my deal breakers and these are the things I will not accept because I know who I am.
Yes.
And what I've learned out of this life. And when I stopped looking for other people to fulfill my happiness, I think I've become a much happier person.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I
That's
totally agree.
beautiful. Thank you, Tony. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
honey. Whew, that was deep. Because that father thing, it runs so deep with so many women, whether he was there and he was abusive, whether he wasn't there and you felt neglected. The men in your life usually reflect whatever that was.
Yeah.
I remember saying, well, it can't be hereditary if you see the abuse, because if you see a man do it who's not your biological father, then obviously it's a learned behavior. And either you become the abuser, you become the victim of abuse, which I feel like victims don't survive, or you become, like myself, a survivor of abuse. And when you talked about that loneliness, it hits home for a lot of women as well, because a lot of times we may choose someone just so we are not alone, but not even considering what energy they're bringing to the table, or what they're bringing into your space, or what kind of energy he has in his space. But just so we can, what I talked about earlier, is just so that we can feel that love.
Yeah. And I want to expand the conversation a little, because I know at probably your audience may be primarily women at this point, but I work with males and females, and the story is the same.
Wow.
The story is the same. The only difference is that one is, the gender.
The gender.
And male clients, they have the same wants, needs, desires. They have the same issues. They deal with the same false self. They deal with the same disease of not enoughism. They deal with the same issues related to self-esteem and, well, lack of self-esteem and low self-image. I mean, bad self-image and lack of self-worth.
Wow.
So it's
amazing.
like it really, this thing that happens to us in society is it's kind of insidious in terms of how the messages that the programming just eats away at all of us. Not
Yes.
I think it's almost more acceptable to say that as a woman you have these issues. It's not quite as acceptable for us to think of men having the same kind of issues, but the reality is that if we're eating from the same pie and one of us gets food poisoning, what do you think is the likelihood that the other one will get it as well?
They are going to get it as well.
They're going to get it as well. And so when it comes to these rules, these labels, these what you should be, who you should be, what you should do, males are getting that same programming, and they're hurting too.
Wow, that's amazing. Whew. Y'all, this is deep. Okay. I'm so excited to, Kanique, Sky, thank you so much. I'm shouting you out online, as well as Naomi Imani. Thank you guys for tuning in. I love you guys so much. We have another caller we're going to take. This is so good, you guys. I'm getting the chills. Hi, caller. Give us your name and where you're calling from. Hello.
This is Brayley Evans.
Hi, Brayley. Hi, honey. How are you?
This has been a fantastic show. Oh,
Thank
my goodness.
you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sue. This is great.
Hi there.
I'm sitting here, just reflecting on my own life and my own self, things I have going on. And as I have never thought about suicide, I realize I take a lot of my life frustration out on food. And not as many people think of, people think about drugs, they think about alcohol, but they forget about those of us who are using food to slowly kill ourselves.
Amen.
And I just wanted to see what Dr. Sue wanted to say, give us some help. I really feel like we're a forgotten few.
Well, I've kind of been there and done that. I have, quote unquote, struggled with my weight all of my life. And it wasn't until I got my relationship right with God and understood myself as a divine being and what that means to me. Once I got that right, the weight has just, it just started to, it's like it started to melt.
Wow.
Because no longer am I engaged in an internal battle. No longer am I trying to be, I'm not trying to be what they tell me to be on television. I'm not trying to be, look like what they tell me to look like on the newsstand. Most of us, you know, we were talking earlier about self-esteem, wearing the mask. If you would close your eyes and just meditate for just a moment, you can probably see internally that your inner self, that's your true self, and that's an etheric form. You can see the outline of that person. You can tell this person. Probably the contours are not as heavy as the person that, especially if you've had the battle with food. So there's this small person. I used to say there's a thin person inside of me.
Yeah.
There's a thin person inside of me. And that thin person is who I really am, right? And so what I am noticing for myself, and maybe there's something here for you as well, but what I'm noticing for myself is that the clearer I am about who I am as a spiritual being, the stronger I am in my relationship with God. I no longer struggle with food because I want to be, when you love yourself as a divine being, then you only want to put the best in you.
Yes.
Right? And you only, the things that you used to do, you don't want to do those anymore. And I have to tell you that, for instance, I don't particularly like working out, but I get up every day and I go because it is consistent with who I am being.
That's right.
It's consistent with who I am being.
Thank you.
I love sugar. I'm a sugarholic. But I don't even keep it in my house.
Right.
Because I know that I can't say I'll have just one. And I know that if I'm showing up to you, if I'm bringing a message to you of health and wholeness,
that's right.
It is not in integrity for me to be something that I'm telling you not to be.
Amen.
And so that's the space that I operate from.
I love that. Yes. Brayley.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brayley. I love you.
Love you. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you, honey. Bye-bye. We have one more caller. Oh, I think we have time. This hour goes so fast. Callers, I'm so sorry if we don't get to you. Hello. Good morning, caller. Where are you calling from, and what is your name?
This is Lucky.
Hi, Lucky.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, honey.
Hi there.
Dr. Collins, you had mentioned earlier about how generationally we pass things down through our families that we might not even be aware of. And I'm currently having a lot of heartache over my daughter. And I'm wanting to recognize what these patterns of behaviors that have been passed down through my family and how to kind of stop it with me, where I don't have to have this go to my daughter. And I know that she's obviously grown up with me and been around a lot of people. And like you're saying, the society right now is very sexually focused, and it's very difficult with our teenagers today. But it's like, how can I recognize what my patterns of behavior has done, my mother's, and stop it where she doesn't have to go through the same thing?
Okay, that's a really deep question, and it's a two-pronged question. I'm going to answer what I consider the second prong first. And actually, my belief is that we are each here as spirit beings on our own journeys. And because of that, that means that we will experience those things that God intended for us to experience. And so as a mother or a parent, even though you want to save her from some things, there's some things you can't save her from because she has to experience those in order to be the person that God intended for her to be. And when I think about that, I think that it's important to emphasize that there are no mistakes, there are no errors. Everything is perfect in terms of God's will, right? And for instance, if you think about one of the examples that I use often is we want to protect people from making mistakes, but if you protect them from making the mistakes, they don't learn what they need to learn. They become very dependent on you. They don't enhance their critical thinking skills. They don't learn how to get up when they fall down. If you pick them up, or if you prevent them, if you put a barrier that prevents them from having the experience that they need to have, what you do, I think, is prolong the process. Because ultimately, if it is a lesson that she needs to learn, she will have to learn it. What you can do to support her in that really is to stay in prayer for her. Now, my mom used to say, and I didn't get it at the time, but my mom used to say, when you have children, you have to stay on your knees. And so now that I am a parent, I'll say I understand that we each are here on our own unique spiritual journey. You can pray for her well-being and pray that she goes through it with ease and grace. So now I've said all that, and I forgot what the first part of the question was. The first part So the first part related to the ancestral inheritance and what it is that you inherit and how you can keep from passing it on. In order to really kind of delve into that, you have to ask those deep questions. Who am I and where did I get it from? And you don't just get things from your parents, you get it from their parents. It's like genetically, your lineage goes all the way back to the beginning of time. Genetically, we're all connected if we went back far enough, right?
Yeah.
And so in the more recent time, you can look to see what are the attributes of your mother, your father, what are the attributes of their parents. And one of the exercises that I have clients do, for instance, is to just kind of write this out using columns, write it out on paper, and look at if my mom's mom was an alcoholic and my mom was an alcoholic, did I get that from her? If my mom was a loving person, if my mom was kind and gentle, did I get that? If my mom was abusive, did I get that? And so you just go down the list with each of those persons, and then I just have them draw, the way I structure the exercises, you draw a line from the person who and the characteristic to yourself. That gives you an understanding of this is where you started from. But there are other layers. You've got, well, what are you getting from society? Society is the religious institutions, it's the schools, it's the government, it's anything that's in a position to perpetrate a message, right? And then not only that, it is all these public figures, because, for instance, I think about kids who wear the different clothes, right? And they don't just wear these clothes because they like the clothes. They wear the clothes because they like the message that the person is giving, the person who designed them or the person whose name is attached to them. So all of that is being layered on you as well. So for you to say, how do I stop this process? It does require you to look very deeply at who you are being. And that's where you start from. And once you're clear about what you're getting from other people, what these beliefs are, then you have to decide, what do I believe? And you can attach a positive and or a negative to each of the beliefs that you've identified. So you don't throw everything out, because Mama gave you some good stuff.
Right, absolutely.
Daddy did too, right? And so you keep that, but now you get to make a conscious decision as to, well, what do I want to believe for myself?
Love it. Lucky?
Yes, can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes. Did you get all of that, baby?
Buy the book,
I did.
Lucky.
That was so wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very insightful, and I appreciate you so much for addressing all of those questions. I know I threw a lot at you. Thank you so much.
I hope I answered it. I mean, I hope I gave you some true insight.
You did. No, that especially the part where it's like, I do completely agree that we all have come here to learn our own lessons, and the most important connection is with God. And I have been doing a lot of praying and just, trying to realize that, one of the things Christine always says is that our children were God's children before they are our children.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really trying to, not trying to take possession of her, but still try to be a good parent. So that was wonderful feedback. I appreciate you so much.
And it's so tough raising children because you want to save them from everything. Like you're conditioned to believe that's why you're here. Like, I mean, you would have thought I was an octopus, as many arms as, with 3 kids, even just trying to fix it all the time was driving me so crazy till I made myself just sick. And we have to understand that they have to fall. They have to bump their heads. They have to, go through their stuff in order to get where God is taking them. Yeah. So, and I texted Lucky last night and I said, just so you know, at the end of this, everything's going to be just fine.
Absolutely.
Everything's going to be just fine. She has to go through this to become who she's ultimately going to be. And I was like, had I known back then what I know now, I wouldn't have worried myself to death about every little thing that my kids were doing, whether it was serious or not. I would still keep a level head and be like, okay, we're going to get through this. But I would be up at the school. I'd be at the Waffle House jacking you up, pulling you out of there and doing all kind of craziness. So I understand what you're dealing with and going through. I love you, and everything's going to be just fine.
I've got 2 comments I'd like to make really quick.
Okay.
Really quick. One is that we always think in terms of people making mistakes, but there are no mistakes because you learn from everything. Everything that happens, you learn from it. Everything that you think or you don't think, you learn from it. And probably the most graphic example that I can give of that is when you see a baby and the baby is learning how to walk, right? What do they do first? They crawl. And when they crawl, they don't usually crawl forward. They scoot backward.
They sure do.
And when they scoot backward, what are they doing? They're strengthening those leg muscles. So we look at our children and somehow we want them to just stand up straight and walk. And we want them to do that not only physically, but in terms of how they live their lives. Wow. But then if we're honest with ourselves, we didn't learn how to live life that way.
That's right.
We had to make some you got to strengthen that get-up muscle.
That's right.
You got to strengthen that get-up muscle.
Yes.
And so you can pray, but you also ultimately have to accept and understand that God just made you the caretaker. You don't have any control over that because whatever she's supposed to experience, she will experience it.
That's right.
That's the way God intended for it to be. That is her path.
That's right. Oof, I love that. Chill bumps again, guys.
I know.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
okay,
God.
Lucky, thank you,
thank
so,
you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
You too. Okay. Can I take another? Okay, we have more callers, you guys. I want to take another call. Hello, caller. What's your name?
Hello?
And where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, it's Andrea. How you doing?
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm good. I've been listening, and I have been, I've been like, okay, I'm crossing T's. I'm like, oh, gotta do that. Missed out on that one. Let me go back to that one and do that. Dr. Sue, thank you so much. I'm
welcome.
dealing with I've been dealing with myself, but I'm also dealing with my children. And I feel like my children, I have twin daughters, but something happened in their lives, and I had to do a whole total turnaround for them with myself. And then now that they are about to be 18 years old, they're about $18. They are they're getting into their own. They're coming into their own. But one is going through a mental. She gets depressed.
Say that again.
And
She gets depressed.
Okay.
Yeah, she gets depressed and she goes and comes. But lately, it's been hard.
Like it's really been hard, and I've been really just trying to work with her, and I understand the layers. I understand when they're around people, and I've just had to just fall on my knees. But how do you get a child to listen and see that, listen, I'm Mom, I know what I'm talking about, let me help you. This has been hard. It's been really hard.
We were just talking about that sort of.
My answer probably isn't going to give you much satisfaction, but it is my answer. And it is that you can have all of the love and all of the goodwill and desire that that's possible to help a person. You can want with every ounce of your being, but you can't want it enough for her. She has to want it for herself. And the thing is that in that regard, a person can only see what they see when they see it. They can only know what they know when they know it. And they can only hear what they hear when they hear it. And if there are blockages and barriers that are preventing them from doing that, you can't overcome them. Now, I'm not a person that believes that you should medicate yourself to deal with your problems, deal with all of your problems. But I do believe that there are times when medication is appropriate. And many times, and I talk about this in the book as well, I've suffered from depression. And my doctors gave me medication. I took it for as long as I wanted to take it. And please don't take this as medical advice. This is not medical advice. It's not legal advice. This is my story about how I handle things. And I reached a point when I felt well enough, which when the time that I'm thinking about, it was like after almost a year of being on medication, I didn't want to be on it anymore. I believed that I was stabilized, and I talked to my medical provider about transitioning off. But I didn't just transition off with nothing. That also is a time that I dug deeply into myself, into my spiritual work. And so as I was transitioning off of the medication, at the same time, I was transitioning into something that was much, much greater.
That's so awesome.
In terms of my knowledge and understanding of God and the power that God has to heal. But sometimes you have to, if you're dealing with depression, it typically is there is a chemical imbalance. And so the medication is necessary to help you give you the balance. Well, if she if she needs medication perhaps, and she either is or is not taking it, then that, because of the imbalance, she can't hear you. She can't hear you. You can talk all you want. She can't hear you. Right. She can't relate to what you're saying because her mind is telling her something else.
Wow.
And so certainly if medical assistance is needed, get that, but understand that ultimately, even with medical assistance, the person has to have that inner desire to make the change for themselves.
Absolutely. I hope that helped you, Drea.
And I'm trying to get her to that point. Yeah, it did. Because I'm trying to get her to that point where she wants it.
So maybe looking into getting help with maybe a psychiatrist who can help with that balance will be great. And then in the meantime, her having someone to talk to and bounce things off of so that she can slowly, gradually, come back to herself and come off the medication.
Yeah.
Well, I love you, honey.
I love you too. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have an amazing day.
Okay, I love you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, we have one more caller, and they've been waiting for a long time, so I'm going to go ahead and take it. Good morning, caller. How are you? Give us your name and where you're calling from.
Good morning. This is Michelle Kennedy. I am Christina's sister.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Dr. Collins. I've heard so many things, great things about you, and conversations that I've had
Hi,
This is Tina,
Michelle.
and hi. So I wanted to call in too because listening to the show, everybody's had great questions and positive, remarks and responses, and I know that we all deal with a lot of different issues. And I guess my question is, I don't know how, but lately I kind of feel like one of the reasons that, or part of my purpose is that God sees me as one of those as a helper. And I don't know why I saw somewhere that maybe one of those little tests or games or something. It's like you were put here to be a helper. You were put here to help others. But at the same time, I know that I'm supposed to take time for me too. But I don't know how I separate and know when enough is enough because I never feel like it's too much, if that makes any sense. I don't necessarily know that when somebody's asking me to do something that it's out of my boundaries to do when I feel like it's within. So how do you know when to say no? Like my aunt, and I've had conversations with Chris, I've had, with different people, is like, you just got to say no. And I'm like, but I don't feel like I should say no because it's not really bothering me to the point of that it's a hindrance. And, I always want to be able to be there. So, if my friends or my family, especially my family, if there's anything wrong at a drop of a hat, I don't care what it is, I'm there because they mean that much to me. But it's never a point where I feel like it's a bother to me or it's a hindrance. It's something that I want to do and I don't have a problem doing. But then everybody's like, you got to take time for you too. You got to do things for you. At what point is there a cutoff? Or is there a cutoff? Is it?
Because I'm dedicating my book to my sister Michelle because every time I've ever called her, whether it was me or my children or someone even in my family, because her mom is my adopted mom, and she says the same thing every time. I'm on the way. That's it. There's no, what happened? What? Okay, let me see if I can work it out. It doesn't matter if she's at work or what. She's like, I'm on the way. And that's been amazing to have that support system. But at the same time, the balance has to be there because even though she's saying it doesn't feel like it's a hindrance, yes, I feel like, Shell, if you don't mind me saying, I feel like it is heavy. It is a heaviness there. And she's not giving to herself in that way. And I think a lot of it is just like me, just wanting to be there, wanting to be loved and cared for, and for everyone to know, hey, I got you, but not necessarily giving yourself that same privilege.
Well, as women, particularly, we are programmed to be nurturers, to give of ourselves, and to always put everybody ahead of us, right? And so that's a part of what's going on, I think. But as you were speaking, I had the mental image of something that I always talk about, and it's if you consider yourself a cup. I've always been in my healed life. I have been taught that you should only give the overflow, right? Yes. And so that means that you've got to keep yourself filled up. And we talked earlier about some of the ways that you can do that spiritually. And because we're so programmed to give, and also because we're not in touch with who we are, not in touch. It's almost like we become so desensitized to our own needs that we don't know we need something else. Right. We don't know we need something. And so you think about that desensitization, and then you think about the programming that you're supposed to help. If somebody calls, you're supposed to help. Right. Those two things say to me, I keep going even when my spirit is saying that I need to stop. Right? And so, Michelle, what I would suggest is that you give some thought to not just that because you said you never feel that it's too much. I have clients that when we have situations like this, I say, okay, so get calm, get quiet, get into a meditative posture, and do some deep breathing, maybe 4 or 5 deep breaths. And then what I'm wanting you to do is connect with your spirit, right? And ask,
Okay.
should I do this? Because, see, I go to God about everything. Should I turn left? Should I turn right? Should I go straight? Should I go to the store today? Should I take care of this? So also, when people are asking you for assistance, go to God first. Should I do this? It's not, we have the capacity to do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so that's not the issue. Really, the issue is, should I do this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you may help a person who, yes, they're in need of help, but if you didn't help them, then they would have to figure out how to do it for themselves, which allows them, again, to strengthen what I'm calling that get-up muscle. Mm-hmm. Because if I know that every time I call you, you're going to respond, then I don't have to worry about taking care of this. I just pick up the phone and call you. Yes. That means you and I develop a codependent relationship. Mm-hmm. I don't have to take care of myself because you're going to do it. My ex-husband said, and I'll say this and then just let this stop, but when I was married to my ex-husband, I worried about everything, and I was trying to make sure that the bills were paid. And it was like the harder I tried, the more money just seemed to just not stay. Mm-hmm. There were more things that had to be taken care of. And I said to him, I said, you're always so happy. Well, I don't understand it. I'm stressed and I'm trying to figure out how to make things work. Right. You know what he said to me? As long as you're worrying, familiar. As long as you're worrying, I don't have to. Why should I worry? It's like, whoa. Oh, that was like, a wake-up call. You'll worry and take care of it. You got this. You got this.
Wow, that's deep.
So the people that you're helping.
That is deep, and it sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
The people that you're helping, you got it. They ain't got to worry about it.
Woo.
So
stop helping so much, sis.
Back up. Go into meditation. It doesn't take long. Once you get the hang of it, you just say, okay, God, should I do this or not? And listen for me, there's an instant knowing. It is, it's not something, and you ask yourself, when you're getting this answer, is it coming from your head? Because your ego will give you a whole thing about why you should do certain things. But when God is speaking, it typically rises up from the heart. Oh, yes. And you hear it instantly. Yeah. You hear it instantly. Even before you finish asking the question, you've got the answer.
You're like, no.
But you're moving so fast, you're not giving yourself that opportunity to allow that to happen.
That's true.
You're operating from your programming, which is they call, I come.
That's right. Wow.
Hope that was helpful.
And I think something you also taught me was, just because they're calling your phone, it's your phone. You pay the bill. Doesn't mean you have to answer. And you can always say, I'll call you back.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. Let me think about this, and I'll call you back. And just taking a moment to see, is this really blessing me to be a blessing?
Yeah.
Or is this something that maybe God needs to teach them, and I may be getting in the way.
Exactly.
And a lot of times that's what we do. Like, He doesn't need our assistance. He doesn't need an assistant. Mm-mm. He just needs us to move so that they can learn the lesson and get what they need to get so that they can move forward.
Yes.
And learn these things so that they can ultimately become better. So sometimes your no is a blessing.
Absolutely,
it's a blessing, even though it doesn't seem like it, because they're not getting what they want, and especially when they're used to you doing it and they're lashing out at you. Still, just know God got it. You were His before you were mine. You'll be all right.
And the last thing I'll tell you about that is, ask yourself, when these people are calling for assistance or you're taking action, what is the story you're telling yourself about why you're doing this, right? What is the story? She needs me. He needs me. I can fix that. But then dig deeper beneath that. And we don't do, I may step on toes here, and I don't mean to. We don't do things without wanting something in exchange. And it may not be something physical. It may be what I call the squishy. If I always respond when they call, they will love me. Mm-hmm. They will respect me. They will hold me in high esteem. And there's a part of you that hopes maybe, well, if I call them, they will too. But see, that's an expectation, right?
That's right.
And expectations are going to always run you into a brick wall, because you can't, you can expect other people to do things, but you can't control what they do or not do.
Wow. That's so good.
Okay.
I know it's
Yeah,
going to be
that was
tough.
good.
'Cause
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love you, honey. We get so.
I love you too. Great.
Thank you, baby. We get so used to the routine.
Yeah.
And that's what we have. That's what's so uncomfortable to break. And we feel so guilty because we're not doing what we usually would do. And that makes it really, really hard. But it's so worth it for us to just let it be what it is.
But if you keep moving through that uncomfort or that discomfort, you get to a point where you're okay with it.
That's true.
Just keep it moving.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a blessing, Dr. Sue Collins, to have you. I saw online where someone was like, can you guys do a part 2 and a part 3? Because they were like, oh my gosh, this is blessing me so much. So I have to have you back on right when this time for this book to release. Maybe come back and bless us some more, you guys. Please look forward to Return to Self by Dr. Sue Collins. I guarantee you it is going to bless you. I have been reading it voraciously and it has been blowing my mind, and just the amazing way that you walk us through the steps of returning to your true self and letting go of the false self and taking off that mask and really living in the freedom. You guys, you don't even understand how much freedom it's giving you to really just let go of all that you thought you knew, you know, and your ways of doing things that aren't so healthy for you and creating dis-ease. Yeah. Isn't that is just so scary that we'll run ourselves to death for other people, won't even do it for ourselves until it just causes us to be, sick, literally sick.
Literally, absolutely.
So we have to make those changes and live in our truth. So I want to know, when can we expect this amazing book, Return to Self, to hit the shelves?
Okay, so the release date is July 4th. Yeah.
Oh, Independence Day, you guys. You know what that means. She's going to set us free on Independence Day, okay? That is awesome.
And it'll be on, help me out here.
Amazon, I think. We're going to be.
Amazon, on my website.
Yes.
And my website's under construction, but it'll be up in a week.
Awesome.
And so we will also be posting on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can reach me for a signed copy, Dr. Sue Carter Collins, and that's Dr. Sue Carter Collins, all one word, at gmail.com.
That's awesome. So you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, and all of those social media outlets under Dr. Sue Collins. And I just want to give a special shout out to Tiara Burrell.
Hey, Tiara.
Burrell with Tiara Goes Green is such an amazing person and has been a light in my life, and I appreciate you so much because she's the one who introduced me to Dr. Sue Collins, and it has really, honestly, you guys, healed me so much and turned my life around. And it's only been a few months. Yeah. So I'm so happy to be able to share her with you. If you guys want to follow me on social media, go to Facebook, and I'm under Christina Johnson. If you're on Instagram, it's Christina Johnson _. Twitter, it's Inner Peace, INNERPIECE. And I just want you to know that I love you. I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
I love you. That was so amazing.